So good morning. My name is Adam Bean, and welcome to Java 1. So I have also lots of fun. So I have about, I don't know, 200 talks scheduled and no time for eating, actually. So what I would like to do, why this talk, interactive on-stage Java EE Overengineering. Why? Because it's an honest title. So usually what I can also show you is Hello World, but I cannot explain you with Hello World how configuration, plugins, and timers work. So I will over-engineer an Hello World application to explain you as much as possible Java EE 6. And what I try to do is to gather my most frequently asked questions and answer them with working code. Whether it works or not depends on demo gods, I would say. But in most cases with Java EE, it actually should work. So you can ask questions at any time. So I'm happy to interact with you or afterwards or whenever you see me at Java 1. And yeah, so let's start. Yeah, about me, it's just I'm working with Java since 1995, and the strange thing is I still like Java. So I just like the programming language. I'm not feeling that I'm not productive anymore or something, so I'm just happy with the situation right now. And yeah, so Java rocks. You can still use other esoteric things, but if you're pragmatic with Java, and especially Java EE 6, you can be extremely productive. And usually what happens in my projects, the problem is not the productivity with the language, rather than the business guys, domain department, domain experts, and all the interaction with the domain experts. This is the real break, not that Java is verbose or whatever. So I never had the problems in the entire career since 1995. From time to time, I organize workshops. So if you like to just come to workshops, so we'll hack together something. So this book is rather old, 1 year. So I explained everything, what you can do with Java EE 6. I built a small application, not small, it works as a statistic for my blog, with Maven and Java EE 6, actually a real-world application. And this guy is new. A new book, about two weeks old, is about best practices with Java EE 6. Okay, yeah, this was my almost the last slide. So I will just show you Java EE 6 from code perspective. And because we only have one time, I will just start with the coding. And this was the last slide. So I'm on Twitter and I have a blog. This is the very last slide. Okay, thank you. So now we can kill this guy and concentrate on the topic. So I would just use the NetBeans daily builds because I used it the recent days and it worked. And I didn't use NetBeans 7.2. So in most projects, I use NetBeans for the only reason you can start up immediately. If you download NetBeans, you get NetBeans with Glassfish bundled, and you are ready to go. This is actually the main reason. If you find some strange things, I don't know, strange things, special requirements, I will probably use IntelliJ, and I'm using Eclipse if I'm forced to. So I will use Eclipse. So I have Eclipse installation. I can just use it, but yeah, if I had the choice, I don't use it. So this is my honest opinion. So let's start with a project, in Java EE 6 project. I would create a web project, not Maven. I will do Maven in the next session. So we have no time, so I would just like to fast develop the application. And good morning, application. What I plan to do, I will submit the application afterwards to somewhere and post a link to via Twitter, so you can download it immediately. So this is the idea. So Glassfish, Java Web, enable context and dependency injection. What this means is it will create Beans XML, so still nothing over-engineered yet. So it creates a project. I will start to try to deploy the guy. Run. Okay, it's deployed. So what it was, I created a project and deployed the application to Glassfish. So now let's create a JSF page. Call that index convention. And then we would like to create a backing bean. So this is this guy. I will just say run. And it should run. So hello from face, that seems to work. And then would say I would like to have a class. I call the class also index. And this is, I think, from Java 1 dot Overengineering. Also index, and I can say this guy is named, so visible for everyone. in JSF space and for JSF and JSPs, and this guy is the request scoped. This is a little bit over-engineered already, because what you could do equally well is to say, this is model. Model comes with Java EE 6. And what model is just an annotation which is request scoped and named. So let's go to write. So for time reason, I just skipped this part. And I would say to you, message, and the message is, of course, return Java. Or, this is not very personal, good morning. So, and now I can say from my facelets, index is the name, conventional configuration message, and where is my browser, and just reload the guy, good morning. So this was full deployment. What do we have right now? Backing bean, JSF, and now start with the over-engineering. Usually, what I would like to have is, I would like to have the next layer is the service layer. And actually, an over-engineering would be to get rid of EJBs and say, we can just go straight with CDI and implement the transactions by our own. So we have no time to doing that. So this is a very tedious thing. So you have to inject user transaction, start the transaction, commit the transaction, and each catch block, roll back the transaction. So it's actually boring task. So I would never do that. So skip this part because you won't learn anything new. Instead of, we say, good morning service. And the service is a stateless session bean. And the stateless session bean creates the message. And what it does is it starts transactions. Transactional good morning. So either you will see that or not. This means transactional. So ACID. I will inject this guy here. Good morning service. And I can use add inject. So I can inject whatever I would like to with add inject and say JMS message. Save the guy. Where is my browser here? Reload. Transactional good morning. So we have, this is a fully fledged application with this transactional. And of course, you can say, this is a really bad thing. What you did, you hard-coded the message. You should never do that. So the first of engineering, I would like to extract this guy. How to configure Java EE 6 application, the most common question. And the answer is extremely easy. So what I would like to do is the following. I would like to introduce a field with the name message. And I would like to remove this guy and say, I would like to inject this from outside. Now, if I will save that, I will get the exception. So, as you can imagine, exceptions are possible in Java EE 6, and they look like this. And what I'm saying is unsatisfied dependencies for type string. It means what I can do, I mean, where it comes from. So what you can do, I can say I build a configurator, and this guy creates strings. And the easiest possible thing is, the name does not matter, is to say this guy creates a configurable good morning. And it produces. So what we did, we externalized the string. And now it should work. Reload the guy, configurable GM. So also you probably are happy right now. What is the problem with that? Someone knows that? Yeah, the problem is you can only use it once. So it's perfect for on-stage hacking, but not for real project. So now all strings are the same. So if I inject the string someone else, it would always see good morning. What is probably somehow critical for real world. So what you can do, you can change that very easily and create a method. I would say configure string. And this method gets injection point. And when the injection point is actually, think of this as the metadata where this guy going to be injected. And what I would like to have is a unique identifier of the injection point. If I will have that, I'm possible then to configure whatever I want. So how to do that? So this is no more required. I would say get, I think, yeah, get the current class. So I get the class back, class, and then I can say get member, get name. So I get the name back, and then can just return to you. The key is class get name. Class name. So, and now I have to say this guy is the factory, and seems to be deployed. Where is my browser? What you see right now is the key is com Java 1 Overengineering good morning service message. So if I create another string here, and we just say plus then you see they are unique. So what now we are actually done, because what we can do right now is to create a table with 2 columns, the ID and the value, and then just fetch and cache whatever you can use. Session scoping, caching is everything already built in, and just configure everything either before the call, after the call, or whatever. So this is what it takes to make fully configurable Java 6 applications. The problem with that is everyone wants to have that, but there is no use case for that. So we built it several times, but it never came to production, because if it was in production mode, no one dared to change the settings in running system. But it is very possible. Questions about that? So configuration done, right? Okay. So of course, what you would like to say in real world, say, okay, this is way too simple. So we have to decouple things and build some intermediary layers. So I will create here a class called, let's say, time provider. And the time provider is, of course, an interface, because enterprise developers like interfaces. So string get time, or let's say some architects really appreciate interfaces. And one implementation, and what's the problem often is, you cannot name it properly, the implementation. So what I see in projects, which is really crazy, is what happens then? Okay, I'm forced to use interfaces, but I cannot name the implementation properly anymore. So I implement the interface, and I have to call that impl. What actually damages the whole concept of interfaces. But no timer service, timer provider. Time provider, sorry. You have to help me, otherwise I won't be able to show you everything. Just the 80%. What the heck was that? So, okay. Now again, timer provider. Get time. So, and what I can do right now, I can inject the interface. Time provider, and because there is only one implementation, it will work for bench over configuration. There's only one choice. You don't have to specify that. So if I come back to my browser, I get the exception, and why that? The exception is incompatible class format error. I didn't save that, I guess. Okay, it works. So you have to save often. So in Java 6, this is a conclusion. So what you see is too early. So what you learned, if you have an interface and implementation, you don't have to configure that, right? So this is actually the conclusion. I would never do that in my project. Actually, if I have the power as semi-architect, I like to delete all interfaces, such interfaces. So from my point of view, it should be prohibited to use the impl convention, because it damages the whole concept of interfaces. You can name the implementation properly, just go for it, but you cannot, you don't need the interface. So, and what remains in Java 6? It remains the concept of strategy pattern. So whenever you will see an interface, then it says to you, it's an API with a strategy pattern, but not just an interface just for decouple everything, which is somehow suspicious, I would say. So, time provider. So let's create another time provider. And this would be exact time provider. And now you see the problem. The first name is the time provider impl, and the second one has another name, is no more consistent. So to be consistent, I would have to create one with the name timer impl 2, of course. This would be a consistent behavior, which goes too far, even for overengineering session, I would say. So implements timer impl, a time provider. It's dangerous with the other class. And this guy just returns return new date to string. And now it breaks because it says ambiguous dependencies for time provider. So convention doesn't work anymore because I have two implementation of the same interface. If I inject interface, it is ambiguous. So how to fix that? There are different possibilities. I could just say this guy is inactive, and then I will get this guy, right? So alternative means what you can do, you can disable beans on the fly, and you can re-enable them in beans XML, in very small XML file, which should be empty right now. It is, but I could activate this guy from here. Okay? So this would be, of course, strange because I built two implementations and disabled one without a reason. But this is exactly what overengineering does, something without having a reason for that. But let's say I would make it a little bit nicer. So what I could do is I could create an annotation. And the annotation looks like that. And this is a qualifier. And the target is, wait a minute, you have to implement this guy, import. Target is, I can apply this annotation on fields and types. And retention is always runtime. And time and retention is runtime. So, and now I can even say exactness. Is something like exactness? This is a valid English word, can you say? Yeah? Okay, then low and high. And then say exactness. Oh no. Exactness value. So what I built is sophisticated annotation, which the name is timer, with one method or property called value of type exactness. And because of laziness, I just created an embedded enum with two values, low and high. So I can say the exact time provider has the exactness of high, of course. I can use static import to make it prettier, so it's no problem. And now I get an unsatisfied dependency error because now I have one qualified and one which is disabled, so there is no one, you know. So this is, of course, a bad situation. So we have to disable that and say timers. So this guy. So again, I don't like that. What's the key binding? Wait a minute. Yeah, and then I can just make it a little bit more readable. So, and now in my good morning service, I can say inject timer with high exactness. And it should work right now. Yes, exact one. And if I come here and say low, then too early. It works. So as I would say, as a test use case, I wouldn't use interfaces in Java 6 without qualifiers. And what I also not allow to have qualifiers which are named after technical stuff. They should have business names. This is not a very good name, like timer. It should be something else, but you have no time to think about this. It's like it should be very readable. Inject timer, which is exact. This would be the perfect case for qualifiers. Okay? Questions? So now the second topic from the agenda was plugins. The most requested questions: how to build plugins. And in Java 6 you can build lots of plugins, but I would show you the most common one. What plugins means is, my understanding is, someone builds a core system, core application, and defines interfaces. And the interfaces can be implemented by plugins and loaded at some point of time, either dynamically or not. Usually is on the server we would like to have something dynamically because we would like to sleep well. If you do too much dynamics, the chances are high that you have to wake up with perm-gen space problems or whatever. So what you can do right now, I would say time provider is a plugin. And I would like to find all guys, or gals, everyone. Any? What it means, give me everything. This means time provider. Give me everything I have. And then I can wrap this with instance. And then, now I can say, first, I can ask the provider, are you ambiguous or are you unsatisfied? So ambiguous, I can ask proactively, are there more than one? Is there no one? Would it work? But it's still not a plugin. What a plugin actually is the following. I can get everyone and return that. So what I have right now, message, I got everyone and just return the message, which is no more configurable, but we are now in the provider space. And what you see is too early and this. So what happened right now, however it was implemented, from where whether they were qualified or not, I got everything back. And what we also do sometimes here, you can select providers which are qualified or not, which have specific type or not. So you can filter from the set of all known implementation of an interface at runtime the most interesting one. We did it several times as plugin mechanism, for instance in Java 6. And the first idea was to use OSGI. Okay, if we had time, we could do that, but we have no time, so let's go with one for loop. Okay? Questions? No questions? So this was the first plugin mechanism. I would say is a discovery-based plugin. This is like, I have an interface, give me all implementations. And how it works in deployment time is, usually you would have one Maven project, which is the war project, and you just put the providers into simple jar projects. The only thing you have to know is you have to put the bins XML into the jar project, and then it will work. This is the only thing to remember. Because something without bins XML is not a Java EE component, so you won't be able to find that. Okay? So in real world, I would have an empty war, not empty, some basic functionality in war, and then I would be able to extend this functionality with jars which are deployed in web in flip. Okay? Any questions? No questions. Great audience. So do whatever you want, but do it, right? So the next topic would be, so what's the next topic? We have plugins. I could show you probably a little bit parallelization. This is probably interesting. So let's ask a lot. So let's say something is too slow here, and I would say I have to compute the message. So let's do that. So I have a message provider, or to store the outcome, let's say. So we have an audit department. And the audit department would like to have all messages. So actually, if you have something like this, I wouldn't inject the audit department to the good morning service. We could use even events, which are nicer for that. But I can show you this. This is very easy. So, good morning service, we can say, I sent an event, not the AWT event, it's something else, events with @inject. And now I can fire the event here. So I'm done here. So what's happened is publish subscribe. This guy is firing the events, and the audit department can receive the event, but I have to specify that here. Say this, it observes the message. Again, it is type-based. Now all strings are sent would also be received by this observer. So what we have to do is to create a qualifier to qualify that. But does it work? Yeah, it seems still good. Got message too early. So you see, the audit department got the message. So this is synchronous delivery. It means the observer would block the good morning service. So let's show you that. So what it actually means is the good morning service. No, the audit department. I will block that. This is not a good practice to do that in production. Just even system out printer is somehow critical, but see what happens. Where is my browser? It's lost. Yeah. Close others. So, oh, it takes a little bit. You see, it takes about 1 second to deliver the message. So, to make it asynchronous, it is fairly complicated. What you have to know is it has to be a stateless EGB or a singleton, but it has to be an EGB. And then you have to find an annotation with the name asynchronous. So, and now it should be a lot faster. So there is no waiting. And you see the events are asynchronously still delivered. Okay? This is the first boring case, but it's very handy if you have all fire and forgets methods can be asynchronous just by annotating method with asynchronous. But it has to be an EGB. Questions so far? No questions. So I'm just thinking about then something new probably. Let's do a servlet, and I call the servlet just comment. So no XML. We are in Java 6. XML is no more necessary. So what's interesting? This is the configuration of the servlet, and I can say async supported. No, not I. True. And now too much methods created by NetBeans. I only need one. This guy and everything else is going to be deleted. So we have a very simple servlet It looks like that. And what I often do, in fact, my Lightfish projects does exactly that. So Lightfish is a monitoring tool. What it does, it pushes in real time via HTTP the data from the server without damaging the server. That means the server doesn't block. And this works with asynchronous servlets. So what you can do, you can say request start async. And what you get back is async context. And if I just start the servlet, it will block forever. And then after 5 minutes with timeout, you will get a server error 500. But the nice thing is it blocks without blocking. So what it actually does, it parks the connection without detaches the connection from the thread. So, and this is why I call that commit. So you can do it right now. It's not Java 7, it's Java 6. So it works with Glassfish, JBoss, and Tommy, whatever. Yeah, error 500. So this was just after timeout. And but the interesting part is what I can do right now is I can just create an event, just ideas, and this event is of type async context. In real world, I will wrap it in something which is not HTTP dependent. Events, and we'll send the event and send the event with events with fire. So now the servlet is done. And what I can do right now is I can create a class, let's say service. And this is a singleton bean, because what it often does, it caches all the events. And there is one method, public void on HTTP, on request, it observes async context. Again, this is just a hack, because usually it is a really bad design to make a service layer dependent on HTTP. So you should wrap it in something like browser window or request, whatever. And then I can say here, AC, get response, get writer. This is also not a very good best practice to chain method this way, but at least there are less lines of code. So seems to work. A little bit exceptions. And then SC complete. So let's retry that. Like that. It works. It means what we did right now, you can imagine, we could right now with 2 lines of code actually, okay, this line is a little bit, I would say this can be refactored to at least 2 lines of code. But usually, this is really what we do in project. The singleton could cache both, or requests and or incoming business events, and match them and distribute the events in real time to all browsers. Okay, this is what it takes. This is long polling, of course. WebSockets are coming, but this is a long polling. And by the way, I think iPhone 4 is using long polling for email notifications, so it scales somehow. Okay? Questions? I think I would just leave it this way, because just implemented everything would be just, I would use another event and just match the events here with a for loop, so we can skip that, right? Okay? So, questions? Okay, then if you have no questions, then I would just show you something simple. Is creating aspects, so like interceptors. Also, a common question, is it possible in Java 6? I would say call tracer. And the call tracer is a regular Java class with trace invocation context. And what I can do, I can invoke the method here. And before and after I can, or just traced get method. So I would like to see all the methods and to see something actually. There's a method around invoke. So, and this is a interceptor which can be applied on all EGBs and all managed beans. What is managed is is everything which can be injected is managed. Okay. So, and I have the good morning service here. So I will only have to say interceptors call tracer. And yeah, even works. So traced. So when it's handy, if you would like to trace performance and build interceptors, you can do it for monitoring purposes. It's really hard in practice to find real business cases where interceptors are viable because the cross-cutting business use cases are very rare. And the next problem is in Java 6 is everything already covered with. So we have transaction security, monitoring, management, everything is there. So to build an interceptor for that, it would be over-engineering. It will fit our theme, but right now I think this is enough to see that it is very easy to implement one. And by the way, you don't have to hard-code it here. You could use interceptor binding and activate and deactivate interceptors in beans.xml. Or even better, what you can also do, you could register interceptors on the fly. And this works with system events or extensions. So if you are interested about that in the, I don't know, I think in one of the recent Java magazines, the Oracle ones, which are free, I wrote an article, just a whole article about interceptors with code which does exactly that. So there is no annotations, and on each deployment, I just all classes I like, I intercept, and the others not. Okay. So questions? No questions? Yes. You could use this for logging, but in practice it's a little bit boring because what you get then is I was in the method, I was in the method, and I was in the method. And this is not what you then get is Heisenbach. So what Heisenbach is, it slows down the system that way that an error only does not occur if you are logging. And if you deactivate logging, it will occur. So you could use that, absolutely. But what you can get for logging, if you like that, is you would get the method, you get all the parameters, you get the target, is the bean, so you get all the context is there. And if you would like to log, it is also a good idea to inject the logger. It could be log4j logger. You have the code already because you get the name of the class here. So what you can do, you can create logger producer, fetch the class name, and configure logging in one place. Okay? Other questions? Mostly it's performance measurement. So if we see we have some problems in development with some facades or something, so we annotate the facade with an interceptor and it just measures the performance for debugging purposes. This is the most common case. In my recent project, what we also did, this guy exposes JMX monitoring data. So we see, I don't know, how many good mornings per second are currently active or something. So more meaningful data than just logging. The problem I have with logging is too generic and too low level. So you have to parse all the file to find out what actually happens. With interceptor, you can compute the data in real time. You can, for instance, you can build something like. By the way, this is in the X-ray application I built for the Blue Book. You can just download the application. This GitHub is free. So I did it exactly that. So what I get, slowest method. So list of all slowest methods and all methods which threw an exception, which was the most common exceptions is in real time. Very easy with interceptors. But logging is a little bit pity because you are writing lots of log and then you have to fire up tail to search for information. You know, this is in the year 2012. Okay? But it's absolutely doable. By the way, also interesting information, interceptors are managed components. So you can inject things to interceptors, beans, whatever you want. Okay? Very good. So I actually forgot what, yeah. Pardon? Yeah, cache, you could use caching as well, but then you will have to introduce your own annotation, like cacheable or something. Then you can do that. Okay, other questions? Very good questions. No questions? Timer service with EGB, would you like to see that? Timer service, something new? So, a timer service kills basically, how it's called, quartz. No, killer is probably too offensive. A singleton startup, so it's started with the application server, and one method do something, and this is annotated with what's the schedule? Almost forgot that. And what we can do right now is every hour, every minute, and every second, something should happen here. So, and does it work already? Saved. Pardon? Oh, no, yeah, exactly. This was just my way to test whether they're still listening or no more. So, but it works. You see, every second something happens. The problem is this this timer is static. So I have to recompile that, and the most common question is not usable in our purposes because we would like to disable, enable, and re-enable. So let's do that. So no more timer. Timer service. I can inject this with resource. In method, I would initialize the timer. And what there is a configuration schedule expression. Should be expression is the name. New. And this is exactly the same. Second, let's say every 2 seconds. Minute, every minute, and hour, every hour. And now I can pass the schedule expression to the calendar timer, and I get the calendar timer back. This is this timer. And what it actually means, I can now, in some other method, cancel the timer. So I could say this timer cancel, and it disappears. And now just think about this. What we could do right now very easily, we could just replace this, or this with configurable string and configure all the timers on the fly. Okay, you can imagine that. I don't have to implement that. It will be just repetition of already. So, and this actually, we used just that. So, and since all the configuration is stored in the database anyway, so we have the administration console already. Okay, I don't know whether it works. Now I have to redeploy everything because now it says we have 2 timers right now, and because there was some inconsistency. So I would try to redeploy that. Doesn't like that. Doesn't matter. Questions? No, it would work. Yeah, just questions I will have to probably, in worst case, restart Glassfish or something. But the problem was I just changed. Ah, no. The problem is not Glassfish. The problem is the speaker. Timeout. I forgot timeout. And without timeout, I got a deployment error that is not consistent. If I would like to configure the timer, I will have to use timeout on method to tell him use the methods for invocation. Questions? Yeah. No, only one. This is a limitation, so if you would like to have multiple timers, you will have to have multiple classes. And probably what's very usable as well is you can say, somewhere you can say is persistent or set persistent. I thought it was here or here. Yeah, timer config. So what you have to do is create a timer config. This is actually really important in production. So set persistent. What's new, I can decide whether the timer is persistent or not. The most common questions are timers cluster aware? And the answer is they are. If they are persistent and the table is maintained globally, only one timer will fire time in a cluster. If the timer is not persistent, you will get multiple timers. They are bound to a JVM, go to the database. And you can configure that here with persistence true or false and pass the timer config here. Pardon? Yeah, you have to configure Glassfish properly because or JBoss or whatever. JBoss stores it in flat files, and Glassfish in default it uses database data source called jdbc/__ default or something, and this is on each domain node. So what you will have to change it to a global database. So this data source will have to point somewhere to a database which runs globally. It's not on every server. Oh, it works. Okay, thanks for your questions. So you healed my application. So yeah, every 2 seconds seems to work. So this was configurable timer, which is persistent or not. Everything can be configurable with injection of resources. Okay, questions? Depends whether it is persistent or not. If it's persistent, all timer events are replied. If it's transient, nothing happens. Very good. Other questions? Then, if you have no question, I will show you something more over-engineered, more parallelization with futures and how to start as many threads you like to with Java 6. Or, for instance, static and runnable. This is actually a nice thing. So, let's say thread starter. So actually, it is forbidden to start threads in the EJB container, which is a good thing. Because what I see as consultant is too many applications are dying because exactly this happened. A developer says new thread, start, and then after 500 times it dies because of out-of-memory error. So thread starter start this could be a stateless session bean with asynchronous. And now we build something where you can just start threads. If you inject the bean somewhere else, we can just create runnable and start it. The trick is, this is a stateless session bean, which is asynchronous, but the asynchronous is managed by the application server. This is absolutely allowed to use EJB functionality, so it shouldn't be any problem. So right now, you build a bridge. Instead of starting a thread, you are using this EJB, and you can start whatever threads you want. And by the way, you can either throttle this thread pool because stateless has max pool size. So you can reduce the pool size and say, okay, I have only this amount of beans. And you can assign a thread pool to an EGB. So, questions so far? And you can even go crazier and say, I'm observing a runnable and just send the runnable as an event. And it will pick up but whatever thread starter is active and just execute it in the background. Okay? So how it would work is in Good Morning Service, I would say let's do the no, runnable, right? Runnables, inject, and let's say I would like to send new runnable, and say here so, and this should be actually sufficient to test that. Heavy work. So it worked. So this was the amount of work which is necessary to execute something synchronous, asynchronously in a valid, managed, and monitored way by the application server. Okay? So we still have 9 minutes. So if you have questions, just ask the questions so I can just use the whole hour. It can be that the timer is running multiple times because I'm hot deploying the applications. And sometimes it registers 2 times or something. So in demo mode, it works. In the next session today, I will use Maven. So all the scripts stuff won't happen. Just for time, I just use this, and everything else is Maven 3. Events. So Good Morning Service, and we had audit department. What's very usable is that I can say, I can specify when the event is going to be delivered. And you can say, after success, it means at commit time, only in rollback case, and in progress, I could even roll back the current transaction. And this is extremely useful for batch processing. So what you can easily do is to send events and register 2 listeners. One listens on commit, and the other one on rollback, and you know which jobs in real time were successful and which jobs failed. And just imagine that. You can expose that in real time via the servlet to all listeners. And this is what we are doing in my current project. We have a kind of progress bar, which is and the data for the progress bar is provided by a servlet, and you can imagine the implementation. This is very simple. But previously, it was a huge framework with GMS, topics, and everything else. And with Java EE, we just deleted everything, and I think there's 3 classes, so you can imagine how it works, right? Okay, 5 minutes, so I'm open for questions, really. Or I could show you that it works. So I would just use before, after success and after failure, and throw exceptions. And in one case, yeah. These questions, yeah. The problem is Spring guys can be really aggressive. That's everything. But what's interesting, this @inject comes from Spring. It was designed by Ron Johnson after Java EE 6 was submitted, and then it was reintegrated to Java EE 6. So before that, Java EE 6 had from C in and out annotations. So what it actually means, this snippet in Spring would look exactly the same. What it also means, if you have an application server, Java EE 6 capable application server, because every application server right now is Java EE 6 capable, and you deploy Spring to the same application, the question is, what do you expect? Who should react to @inject? Java EE 6 or Spring? This is binary, the same annotation. So it's really, what I can tell you, I wouldn't use Spring in Java EE 6 containers, because it's too much overlap. But using Spring on Tomcat is absolutely a viable decision. The decision should be decided by someone else, by business. We can only say, look, there's an application server that comes with this functionality, and this is Spring with this functionality. Take whatever you want, depends on your skills or whatever. But what I can tell you, all my projects at Java 6, I didn't miss a lot, I would say. So you can achieve extremely, really, yeah, I'm a consultant, so I'm some NDAs, but you can build crazy applications with Java 6. And it's getting crazier and crazier. And even very easy, you can integrate that with NoSQL, for instance, Eclipse Link. There are cool projects. But if I would build, let's say, a cloud or something, Spring is probably more flexible because Java 6 is server-side framework. You can run Spring whenever you want. But it's starting to change right now as well because, for instance, Weld from JBoss and or how it's called Open Web Beans from Apache, you can put them outside the application server. You can use the whole dependency injection model without having an application server. So it's really hard to answer. The problem is too much overlap. And I try to reduce as much framework as possible so that in my work there is no external dependencies. It's very important to me to get fast deployment time, so fast turnaround cycles. Other questions? There is I got yesterday a thin book like Java 6, and I think this is a very thin book. It is easy to learn. I also wrote some books, but my books are probably not for starters. I think it's like a problem solution, but it's not a consistent. But the first blue book could be interesting for you because I built whole application on top of Java 6. And before buying any book, just check out the Java 6 tutorial. Look for that. It's about 1,000 PDF pages with all single. Yeah, this is actually a comprehensive tutorial which is free, completely free. You can download for free PDF, and there are lots of even Kindle resources from Oracle. So you can download tutorials in mobile format, Kindle. So resources is another problem. So you can get lots of tutorials on the internet. Java 6 is actually extremely well documented. There was another question. I will do it in the next session, really. So, okay, this was more real-world, hands-on JUnit, Mojito, and whatever. This was a tutorial, 2 hours or something. But just quick answer: JUnit for unit testing, Mojito for mocking, and Arquillian for 10% of all special cases. And Graphene is an extension of Arquillian, where you can integrate very easily Selenium with Arquillian. When it is, I have today. Before lunch, I think. It's full. Yeah, it's full. There were 200 on wait list. Not this time. I don't know why not. This time it didn't happen. Please fill the surveys. This helps me to get such stretch topic to get accepted. So hard fight to get that talk accepted here. So I think we are done. We have 2 minutes. Other questions? So I'm open for questions, really. I will zip that and clean up. Clean up, it means I will just clean all the classes and then send a tweet with the URI. You can click on that and we'll download the zip. This is what I can do. When it depends on internet connection, really. So I will try to do today, in worst case, today night. Pardon? Adam Bean. Adam Bean is my Twitter ID. Adam, wait a minute. This is my Twitter ID, Adam B. So thank you very much, and see you later.